25 to 9, and as you heard in the news headlines with Stephen Schubert, news on that alleged assault. A 5-year-old girl has allegedly been sexually assaulted by 2 boys under the age of 10 in a remote Northern Territory community. Territory families responsible for child protection of the NT said the department is working with NT police to investigate allegations of sexualised behaviour in the 3 children under the age of 10, which took place on the weekend. Now, we're told by a spokesperson the child is safe and with the family. Minister for Territory Families, Dale Wakefield, said to the age of 10, which took place on the weekend. Now, we're told by a spokesperson the child is safe and with the family. Minister for Territory Families, Dale Wakefield, said she did a task force was working with Territory Families to investigate, and said there is no requirement to call for assistance from the public and the welfare of the children is the primary concern of the investigation going forward, he said in a statement. Now, as I said, all those children involved are under the age of 10, and it does raise questions about sexualised behaviour, especially in people, young people, so young. Holly-Ann Martin is Director of Safe for Kids. She's been working in the NT for 10 years, facilitating anti-sexual abuse education programs. Morning to you, Holly-Ann.
Good morning.
When you hear news like this, what is your reaction?
My first instinct is that the children have seen possibly pornography. That's been my experience in other cases similar to this across Australia. It's so accessible now with mobile coverage. If kids have got an iPad or a phone, then they can, within 2 clicks they can witness pornography, unfortunately.
Now, as we said, the details are remaining we don't know a lot at the moment, and obviously Territory Families are acting to ensure that the kids are safe who are in question. But in most cases where you have sexualised behaviour or sexual assault involving young people, you were saying pornography is a key element?
Yes, I was just reading an article actually from the UK saying that child-to-child sex abuse in the UK is up 400%. In the last 3 years, and that's all due to pornography. There are so many cases that have been in the media recently across Australia, to back that up. When I'm called into a community, sometimes it is about child-to-child, and, again, it's because the children have seen these things.
Now, you mentioned the access to images like that, but surely kids, and, I know we live in the new digital age, but have you come across instances where kids under the ages of 10 are accessing information like that?
Oh, yes, definitely. And even in communities where there is no mobile coverage. I was in one community in the Central Desert, and I was talking, because I don't call it pornography when I'm working with children, I call them private pictures or private movies. And I had a 5-year-old, when we were brainstorming, where might children see images like that, a 5-year-old told me on a USB stick. And that's been my experience as well. Communities that have no mobile coverage, young people go into, local centres and they can download it on a USB stick and then watch it on TV. So, it's not just communities that have digital access, it's prolific in all communities, unfortunately.
With that in mind, and you've obviously spoken to young people about these images, about these private images or private films. What do kids say they're seeing? How do they respond? I mean, these are images which are not supposed to be viewed by anyone under the age of 18. What do kids under the age of 10 say about what we call pornography? What is it actually? How is it affecting them?
Well, they don't understand what they're seeing. When we were children, possibly you're the same age as me.
I'm in my 50s.
Well, yeah, same age as me. We played Cowboys and Indians because that's what we were watching. Children are seeing this filth, and they can see it on YouTube. There is so much on YouTube, unfortunately, that they're acting it out. They're, monkey see, monkey do, basically. So, unfortunately, they don't know how to process it. There's nobody talking about it. And that's what our program really specifically goes into, teaching about consent and things like that, because, young people and even teenagers, so if child-to-child and teenager-on-child is half of all sexual abuse, unfortunately.
Is that across the country?
Yes. And so young people, teenagers are going to pornography to get their sex education, but young people are coming across it, and, there's so many tube sites that are like YouTube, but have specific, it's early morning, so I need to be
Yeah.
careful about what I'm going to say. But there are some heinous things.
Graphic material, which...
Yeah, and those things have been acted out by children also.
What about the role of parents or family in moderating or controlling or intervening in this? And I'm not talking about bush communities, I'm just talking about any sort of environment. What is the role, and is there a lack of any actual parental input in these sort of places?
I think a lot of parents don't realise exactly how much, access their children do have to these images and things like that. And many parents say to me after a workshop, "Oh, Holly, my kids don't have iPads or iPhones, and our computer's in the lounge room, or where we can see them." But they forget that their children mix with other children. So, I've been working nationally with a group of people to try and get our government to look at the English model. England's really the only country in the world that's taking this problem seriously. And in England, they've passed laws where if you want to watch pornography, you have to go through a third provider sort of thing to get access to porn.
Yeah.
We're not saying nobody can watch it, but in Australia, our government, it's not even on their radar. The different politicians I've brought this up with said, "Holly, it's not something that we're even concerned about. We were supposed to have a Senate inquiry into the effects of it, but it really didn't get legs, and it is a huge problem, and we're only going to see more problems like this one that we're talking about happening.
Well, with that in mind, and you talk about going to communities, what change can be wrought in communities with young people and what they're seeing, and trying to get them to come to grips with the sort of imagery? I mean, is that possible when you're dealing with kids under the age of 10?
Well, we have to educate. We have to educate about consent. We have to educate that if you touch somebody else's private parts, you're actually breaking the law. I had to actually write a children's book specifically about this because I had a principal ring me where he'd had, in the 2 months prior to him ringing me, he had 6 separate cases of this happening in his school, and he was looking for resources, and there were none. So, we need to educate about consent, pornography, all of those things, and it's not something that's been done.
Well, yeah, that's the question. What are we doing in the NT at the moment? I mean, obviously, the children and the child who has been allegedly assaulted in this instance are in the, Territory families are doing their bit to ensure that child is as safe as possible. But what's actually happening on the ground in regards to Territory families or government responses in the Northern Territory?
Well, it needs to be started in the schools. It needs to education with the children. When I go into a community, though, it's a whole of community approach. I educate the teachers to continue the program once I leave, but also working with the parents, working with the other service providers in the community, because everybody in the community needs to know what to do if a child discloses that this has happened to them. I've also been very fortunate in my time to have done 49 workshops with solely Aboriginal men talking about this problem, and the men, don't realise the effects that pornography has both on their brains and on children's brains, and things like that. So much education needs to be done through education, through health, and also through the Department of Child Protection, because it has to be everybody working together to get this education out. I've been talking to health clinic staff, and, unfortunately, porn addiction is huge. And when I've been saying, when the men come saying they've got erectile dysfunction, do you ask them about their pornography consumption? They had no, we didn't think about that sort of thing. They're also seeing women that are damaged by some of the acts that have seen in porn and then acted out by adults. And even that's not being talked about. So,
can I ask you, Holly-Ann, with young kids, and we're talking about kids in this instance, alleged instance over the age of 10, can you actually intervene and make a difference in their lives? Can they actually, it's not as though we say, oh, that's just too hard. What do you do?
Like I said again, it has to be education. both for the, and it needs to start from the age of 3, that nobody's allowed to touch their private parts. They're not allowed to touch anybody else's private parts. No one's allowed to show you private pictures. No one's allowed to take private pictures of you, and you're not allowed to take private pictures of yourself, because all of those things are happening.
You know, after the intervention in 2007, pornography in prescribed areas was banned. Did that ever have any effect? Did that ban have any effective impact?
No, because there was no education done. And in fact, in my experience, people in remote communities in the Central Desert don't actually call it pornography. They call them blue movies.
Yeah.
So, you know, putting up big blue and white signs saying no pornography, and actually people have gone, pornography? What's this pornography? And some of them went, and I've had this said to me, some of them went looking for what this thing was because they didn't know
what was being banned.
But there was no education done about the, you know, the vast problem. And even back then, you know, it wasn't, you know, children didn't have access to iPads and iPhones and smartphones as much as they do now. So, you know, it was part of the intervention, no education, and now more access.
Prevalence.
Yeah. You know, in the 5 years of the intervention, not one person was charged with having pornography.
Yeah. Hey, Holly-Ann Martin, sobering start to the morning, and yeah, let's hope we hear more about actually intervention rather than more of these sort of stories. But thank you so much.
Thank you for your time.
Holly-Ann Martin, CEO of Safe for Kids, been working in bush communities over the last 10 years. Yeah, sobering stuff. Anyway, as I said, there's that alleged sexual assault involving a 5-year-old girl in a remote bush community here in the Northern Territory. You're probably hearing news about that this morning. Let's talk about migration.